but he does have control. Anyhow, all right.
Yeah.
I'm getting the message that we're being recorded. All right. Greetings all. Stand up on the first day of October. Very exciting. Before we go around, I'll just touch base to say that we finally got the paperwork over from our funder, which is the pre-approval paperwork. And we actually, in a day, which is not really a day because I've been working on all the involved parties to be ready for this day, but they were able to say, is this okay? And we were able to say yes in the same day, which means that now we just wait for them. We just wait for them to sign, and then once they give it back to us, we sign, and we'll have the new funding. So that's exciting. And
wow.
And then also we finished our deliverables and turned in our report for the first grant yesterday, and heard back and said, oh, that looks nice. And there were nice superlatives, nice words like amazing and good work and stuff. So great job, everybody. And I don't know, take a breath and pat yourself on the back and all those nice things. All right. That being said, let's go around and talk about how we're still working on all the stuff that came out. Bryce.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna add that's the big clarifier is that we did all the deliverables, but the key point is that we moved Tyler's stuff past the deliverables. So been making some progress. Tyler's help with her suggestions for fixing some of their specifically Tyler's suggestions for fixing return date stuff wasn't really useful because it wasn't not useful, but it was essentially is like, oh, you need to have a motion type, but motion types are only available on a very small subset of cases, and specifically only subsequent cases. And so there's like, if you make an initial filing, there's no way you can have a motion type. And so I asked for a clarifier on that, and then I'm working on trying to get these specific case types and motion, or get the specific case types to go through such that we can get a subsequent case, so I can test and see, hey, if we try to get a return date with an actual motion type, does it work? But was having to just iron out a lot of stuff on the way there, including another thing that may have been confusing or misleading in the Tyler documentation about what filing types we're grabbing. So several questions are out on Tyler, but still just trying to make progress on a lot of stuff. Yeah. That's really,
it sounds like progress is being made. You're finding the terra incognita, right? The edges of the map, and we're figuring out where they are, and that's good because we're getting the shape of things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the only other thing is I think Quinn and I may have done some of the same work on. I just realized in the filing interview, at least to get to that point, I had to do some of the same work, and so I'll try and do the work on merging those two in, so you don't have to worry about it.
Was that around the filing ID stuff, the party ID stuff, or?
Yeah. I did like a really bare bones one just so I could select it and get past it. And I think I took a glance at yours and it looked like it was much better. So I'll try and merge them in a way that makes sense. So, but that's
all right. I was just doing like a little cleanup there too, to move some stuff into the module that was in the body. But
great. Okay. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well then, Quentin, why don't you just pick up from there? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I think the Tyler stuff is moving along pretty well. It's just so much stuff. It's like, I guess if all we had done was just try to build a front end and we didn't care about any of it being reusable and weren't trying to build the REST piece, and it might have been a lot smaller. But I just, every time I'm like marveling at their idea that people did this in 3 months. But okay. I feel like next week we'll have a pretty good update as to exactly how much longer it will take, and we'll know how outstanding questions answered. Maybe we'll be finished at the end of next week. We'll see. But if we're not, probably we'll be ramping down my own involvement a bit, so that might push things out a little bit further. But either way, I feel like at some point we'll say, we're just going to see if anything we still have outstanding to make polished is actually something Tyler cares about, by floating a trial balloon and saying, hey, we think we're ready to certify. What's that like if there's something left? And hopefully they'll say, yeah, why don't we just take a look at it, and you can get one more bite at the apple, at least without us complaining if things are just way off base. But I bet we have almost everything done that they should really fairly be able to expect, because the rest are just like implementation details like that, maybe someone really shouldn't care about with what their goal is with building out this connection. And that just reminds me, like, we've been kind of postponing or skipping or trimming down our coding deep dive meetings. I'm going to be joining someone's class as a guest next week during that time, and actually will overlap with our stand-up with Ileo and Lanyap as well. So I don't know, maybe Bryce and Michelle, either one of you wants to take over. There might be something that's worth discussing then when I'm not able to be there. I'll leave that up to you to think about now, just a little bit extra time.
I'd be fine with trying to run things. At least I've been also trying to do I'm still going to be like pretty much only working on Tyler's stuff, but I am going to try and go back into doing more things and not just 100% Tyler everything for the whole week. So I can do stuff in the code meeting. I feel like we've just skipped a bunch, and so there's at least probably a backlog of stuff that like longer discussions that I know Michelle and Lily wanted to have. So
it sounds good. And yeah, I think we have a little bit of a backlog. My students are going to be learning the Weaver next week and introduce that in class. I think I got about like half of my wish list done before that, for like things that were improvements to the Weaver, but I think it's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's nice to not have our backlog grow too large for things that are actually valuable to do. And most of them are small. So that could be a potential topic, but maybe only if people have thought about it in advance and have time to add thoughts to it. Not crucial.
All right. Well, it sounds like the deep dive meeting can take place with Bryce convening, and that our schedules are renewing some type of phase change. So that's exciting. All right. Anything else?
Nope, not that I can think of. Just been totally on Tyler, so I think that covers everything.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm in the same way with the spot stuff, and I've been totally on this, like all the stuff that needed to be for deliverables, but there's still all this, like I'm in the middle of a new model build for the issue spotter and the implementation of all the legalese stuff that we said was going to be a requirement for things on the site. So I have to make new workflows and everything. So I hear you. It's like it's been all this, and it's different, but still a lot of stuff. So, and whenever I stop here, I get mosquitoes. I thought they wouldn't be here today, so I'm going to keep walking. All right, Michelle.
So one thing to bring up related to the backlog, I think it would help to have a label, like if there are things that you especially want to point out that don't have a label, then it might be good to give them the next label or something like that, so that when we're preparing for Monday deep dive, we know what to look at.
Yeah, I can try to triage some stuff into milestone.
If not, then not. We'll just look at what's there, but
I'm not saying you have to do that. I was just thinking it's something that could be anyway. And yeah, I mean, like in some ways people might not like things shifting underneath them, but it'd be good to take a look every once in a while and just make sure easy stuff that could get done quickly is getting done.
Okay. So other stuff is, I transferred Jamie's repo. We did he transferred to me and then I transferred because his, he wasn't a member of the team. Yeah. The other stuff, testing framework wise, Rocco, Code for Boston, is working on research about comparing PDFs, which I think would be a strong added feature. If anybody wants to talk technical details, I can, but I don't think that's necessary. We're continuing to do research. We haven't found any one solution yet, but we're hoping we're close to finding something that could work kind of out of the box. We'll see. And Neha's been working on some like small adjustments as she can to like improvements that have just been a while coming, that just little things. So, and that's it. And Quentin has just remembered 2 things.
All right,
So,
let's see there. Well, if that's it, then we can see the 2 things.
Well, first thing is, I mean, whatever the PDF stuff you're working on, Michelle, might dovetail really nicely with our upcoming grant, which is all about more automating more of the PDF stuff. I mean, it's not all that it's about. It's a big piece of it is analyzing PDFs and recognizing form fields automatically is one of our deliverables. So that'll be interesting to see if it connects at all, some of the PDF libraries. And then, yeah, so actually, I was feeling a little bit unsure if there was any way for us to move the 258E forward, but 2 of my students were really interested in it. And I think that there's a small enough scope project there that they could work on it and get it closer to launching. So we will see. They plan to
Music
work
to my
on
ears.
the complaint
258E.
and the affidavit. We'll see how that gets divided. And I just want to say, so the up to code tool I've mentioned, which is this housing conditions tool, which incorporates some of the forms that students had worked on in years past. I think it's now officially live. Maybe we can add a link on
Yeah,
our website to it now.
shoot me the info and we'll update that page.
yay.
If you want to just add them as forms, you can just do it in the sheet, or you can
Yeah,
give me something.
I'll try to do that so that it's just like, I can
yeah,
just
I'll
ask you
clean
to-
up whatever's there. Yeah.
And I forgot, it took a while for me to actually get the link to it. First, I saw their new design stuff, but one thing that Theory and Principle did was a UX audit, which might have some recommendations that are helpful. I have spent a lot less time looking at it than I would have preferred, because I first had the design stuff and I was like trying to get that in by the end of this month, while also still doing all of the other Tyler stuff we're trying to get into this month. But I suspect there's something there that'll be universal that might have more feedback, just like we use the Bentley UX audit to make universal improvements. That might be something to keep in mind. And yeah, as you know, I keep thinking, as we're resourcing new grants, having somebody on our team who had a front end focus, a design focus or skill, might be valuable. I don't want to just have somebody get added to the team. I don't know what to what extent we can hire anybody, but or even budget for it explicitly. It's hard when someone just gives you a whole list of here's like a bunch of design improvements, and now you spend 100 hours implementing these ideas. But if we had someone who could kind of combine some of those 2 skills, it would be nice. Because sometimes I just feel like we're flying blind with that.
Yeah.
And it's
I think
a
one
huge
of the
part
things we,
yeah.
I think the way the current funding looks like it's shaking down, there probably is money to pay some folks to do that, but not to hire them as full-time folks.
Right. It just is, there's like a slow part of converting someone's wireframe, for example, into
Right.
DocAssemble compatible CSS and HTML. So having someone who was doing that regularly would be nice, so then it's not like a one-off each time.
Yeah, well,
or that we make sure that the design deliverable is closer aligned to what we can do easily, instead of like, a bunch of small changes, which are like, hey, those are nice, but those are really hard,
nice, but
versus
really
there's bigger
hard, yeah.
impact that, it's hard to triage that someone really is connected closely. They could.
Well, we should, even
Yeah.
if we won't have enough for a full time, we should be able to build a real relationship with someone. So we should start thinking about, given the constraints of not a full-time hire, what is it we'd be looking for? And could we scope that
We could do something with a weekly consultation, right? Like, so that there's like 2 hours a week or something where we could like, I mean, obviously more than that at the start, and then kind of a like, 2 hours a week to like dive more deeply into like the what's going on with DocAssemble and what's possible there, and to really like hammer out code type things. As far as the person, as long as the person was able to, did have those skills to understand those aspects.
Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
know,
like,
that's
honestly,
not as good,
yeah,
but
something, it's something though. I mean, it's an interesting question. Yeah, if someone could like take a look at our UX audit, the one that we had for the 209A formally,
Mhm.
and then maybe this one up to code, depending on how relevant it is. It might be what I would want to see is like, here's a list of target goals, and then have someone with some insight into how feasible they were to help us triage and prioritize them. And then ideally someone who could help.
Yeah, some of the implementation, I think, is that's where.
What we don't need is a bigger backlog, obviously, right? But
No.
I find
if it's the right-
the
most important thing.
CSS stuff kind of not as challenging to do as other stuff, and I can like work more closely with. I'm not a designer. That's I'm not a designer, but I can implement stuff, or I can give feedback on like what is going to be manageable, more manageable, what will need JavaScript. Like, is that like, would it be feasible JavaScript, or is it going to be very fragile, or like, I can like, that stuff isn't generally not too challenging.
So
I
maybe the wireframes would actually be helpful for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find them to be like just a daunting to do often.
Oh, yeah, no, the CSS stuff is not. It's kind of doodling. So just had to dive into that once a while ago. And yeah.
I think if we're really sort of honest with timelines, I think what we should be thinking about is from the school schedule standpoint, we'll all have a little bit of time to breathe at the end of the academic semester. So we're about halfway through the semester now, which means that sort of things will sort of pick up and get tight again. But in December, we enter exam period. And aside from the fact that we'll be helping some people with projects, at least our teaching and other responsibilities will sort of wane a little. So I guess what I'm saying is what we want to do is, as a group, maybe think about, and then we have to, the lab has to think about some of the grant stuff and implications. And by that time, we'll know where all our money is coming from. And we're going to need to do like a big planning. So I think December is going to be like planning. It feels like December is going to be a big planning month for us. And then we'll try to hit the ground, maybe running, in the new calendar year, because we have to roadmap out all this stuff for the grant and the gift. So just to give us some milestones, I think like it's good we're talking about this now. I don't think we'll have capacity to get details, but I think we want to have, in this minute, but I think we'll the idea, I think the goal should be to have clarity by the end of the calendar year. Does that sound like a reasonable cadence for?
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking like a year ahead, basically, for when we would
Yeah,
start
we're good.
doing some things.
Yeah, we're going to want to basically sit down, because with these two, so Michelle, to give you the context, these two funding opportunities that are coming through now both have 2-year time horizons on them. Okay. So what that will mean is, it means when we're doing this planning and road mapping, we'll be doing it on the sort of 2-year cycle. So okay. Coming out of December, we'll hopefully have a plan.
That's a very very different timetable to be thinking about than we have in the past. That's interesting.
It is, although it's more in keeping with some of the other grant work we've done. It's a sort of traditional grant cycle. So that'll have implications, obviously, for the assembly line and for other stuff in the lab. And then the other thing is that we'll be it will be less variable, as like right now it's always been like what's going to be here, what's going to be there. Like we'll be pretty much at capacity with those grants. So
Okay.
so there won't be a lot of play in the joint. So we do want to have, like, as far as people's time at least. So we'll want to schedule that all out. So start thinking about what you think would be good for the assembly line, and then we have some very specific deliverables on the funding, but we're sort of putting them under the umbrella of the assembly line.
Okay. Cool.
And in some ways, we have flexibility. That's not too different from what we've been doing now. But,
No.
But in some ways, it won't be. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we won't be. I think the thing that, maybe flexibility is the wrong word. Maybe the way to positively spin it is we will have security, stability. Like, we know that with this money, there will be money and time for Quentin, Bryce, and myself for 2 years. Like,
Okay.
that's known. It's not a question of like, how long can we do this? We know we can do this for 2 years. And there probably isn't, because of the capacity, there probably isn't much chance that extra money is going to just fall from heaven. So we're sort of constrained with, we'll think about what we would do if stuff magically happened. But the reality is that we probably have 2 years that we can count on as a plan.
All right.
Which to me sounds sort
Yeah.
of nice, right? Like, it's like we kind of know what, and we have specific deliverables that we need to go to, and then basically anything we can fit in around those is gravy, right? So
Yeah.
the idea is, how can we build this out and then flesh out beyond it and connect things in such a way that we can get, more, the total being more than the sum of its parts, sort of thing.
Yeah. And think about broad goals. Yeah.
Well, for like example, like one of our first deliverables we'll have to do earliest is like doing analysis of paper forms, right? Or at least PDF versions of forms. And there's a lot of ways to go. That could be like a really technical series of months. It could be a very high level series of months where we start out, and so, and exactly the shape of how we deliver our analysis isn't spelled out. So that's another place where there's room for lots of different kinds of deliverables, but it has to meet that goal of helping people understand their forms and how they're being used and where they're redundant.
Yeah.
So,
Or
I mean, there's obviously a technical piece to it no matter what, but it doesn't have to be where we spend the most engineering and most of our time.
Cool.
And there will be a difference between sort of like the lab's time and like the assembly line sort of time. So like, Michelle, the stuff where like you would be involved, whereas, like, which is what we're talking about now, as opposed to there will be some stuff that'll just be like lab stuff that's done off to the side. That's always the way that it's sort of been. But I know you expressed an interest in liking to know about the context of all that other stuff. So I thought it was appropriate to sort of bring it up.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's really, it's interesting, and it sounds like really good work. It's incredible.
Well, I think that's
How we deliver.
Well, it's the intentions are quite noble. Right.
Well, I was looking back over our, we had to do our final report for the grant we just did, which included a grant that I had started pre-COVID, and then we sort of moved in on this assembly line stuff into it as a modification. And we've done a heck of a lot of stuff in the like little bit of time we've been together, and it's just amazing to me actually when I look back at it. And I was like, I'm reading through and I'm realizing like all these connections that you sort of take for granted when your head's in it, but like I'm going back through and I'm realizing all this work we're doing here is being informed by the work we're doing with the appeals court. And they're like real, like people are like staying in their houses. We're getting stories of people using the app every week from Paul. He just keeps saying, yep, they keep coming in, it's helping out. And I think it really for me helps to sort of underline where the potential of all of this can go beyond as we get more adoption and expand, these tools. So like, I think everyone, I know we're not at necessarily a point where like we can stop and have a big old celebration. I think everyone should pause and give themselves a pat on the back and just realize we've done a lot of stuff, and I think it's really been helpful to people. I mean, we've helped tens of thousands of people in some way. And I think that's like in really like, it's in my very like conservative, like printed out a form at least sort of way. There have probably been other people who just come to get information who have been helped in, you know, in ways that are, you know, much less than that. But I don't know, everyone should feel very proud. That was my, that was just
Yeah.
my closing thoughts. Anything else for stand up?
No, I'm good.
All right, and Bryce, I guess you can stop the recording.